when I look out and see you guys as leaders. You know, a lot of these faces have been here since before December 2nd, supporting this program, supporting this team, supporting the vision that Gene Bartow had for UAB and what we all believe that it can be. And I just want to say thank you again, because I don't think, you know, we hear it enough. And it's this group that is truly making a difference. Jack is going to share some things with you later tonight that are so exciting as we move into this week, this big week legislatively. I also want to say thank you to Jack, because let me tell you something, that guy has taken a lot of arrows in the back and has stood up for this program, this city, this athletic program, all of us. And Jack, I want to just give you a round of applause and say thank you. I want to say thank you to Chris, you know, for Chris to step up. Chris called and emailed me several times back right after this travesty happened, and Dr. Watts walked into that locker room and shook his blue water bottle at those kids and told Ty Long that he had asked enough questions, he didn't need to talk anymore. When he made that announcement, right after that, Chris was getting in touch with me, and the fire and the passion that you've shown and the ability to unite this group, man, I just want to thank you as well. I appreciate you leading this organization. Thank you. You know, Jack asked me to get up and talk about a little bit about, you know, the Carr report, about what's happening financially, you know, pros, cons, different things that are going on, maybe give an update or two about the study. And it was kind of funny. Jack just talked to me back in the back of the room, and hasn't, you know, it's been since December 2nd, but my goodness, it feels like a lifetime. There is so much that has gone on. I think back to, you know, the letter that the former players from the B Club wrote back in early November after having a meeting with Ray Watts, where as a foundation we brought a commitment for $5 million to build an indoor practice facility. And he said he was not interested in that. I was in the meeting. I promise you I know what he said, because I was so excited, because I felt like with Bill Clark and then with this commitment with Jimmy Filler and Harold Rips and so many people stepping up, making a commitment, I said it is time for UAB to finally turn a corner. We finally got the leadership that we need, and it's time for us to turn a corner. And I was so excited walking into that door, and I have never been so disappointed when I walked out, to see the lack of vision, the lack of leadership that this university has, that is so different from what I remember coming through here in the late 90s, and many of you all experienced. You know, UAB was founded on greatness. It was founded on an idea that we don't hold ourselves to a normal standard, but we think in terms of being in the top tier. And everything about UAB was that way. I mean, think about it. We came from a university that was nothing just in the late 70s to all of a sudden being ranked in the top 10 or 11 in funding. I mean, that is a phenomenal, phenomenal statistic. And think about what's happened. You know, I think about athletically. You know, we're the only program in FBS sports that has no money in facilities. I want you to think about that for a minute. There's no money on the capital balance sheet, and has not been in 5 years for UAB. The only program in the United States at an FBS level that can say that. We do more with less than anybody in the country. There's no doubt about it. And so I think through, we all hear about the Carr report. And Jack, honestly, I don't know that I have to do a whole lot to really discredit that, but there are a lot of things that stand out to me. The first thing that was really, really interesting, which Alan Bolton told me in a meeting that I had with him the day before Thanksgiving, that I'll never, ever forget. I asked him about the $20 million subsidy. I said, how can a subsidy be $20 million? Because we keep hearing about that, right? Dr. Watts says we got, over the next 5 years, it'll be $100 million invested in, they've said football, which is not exactly correct. They're talking about all the athletic programs, right? Well, here's something that is so interesting. What athletic program brings in more revenue than all the other ones put together? That's football. It's unbelievable. Yet that's the sport we're going to cut. And then they talk about the 20 million is not going to change on one hand, but yet in all the public statements, even Mr. Espy himself, after the Board of Trustees meeting, stood up and said, do you want us to take 20 million from education for football? And I was sprinting in the room, because I would love to have that opportunity to have that debate with him. because it's simply not factual. If we're going to go to Montgomery, Chris, we're talking about we need to have the facts. And we're going to present with class and with dignity what the facts are in this situation. Well, I'm going to share a fact with you. $20 million a year is not going to football. $20 million is a subsidy they claim is coming from the university to subsidize the entire athletic program. But that's not a true statement, because UAB is odd in this fact. They actually charge the athletic department full freight for scholarships, and they actually write a check back to the university. So I'm going to use round numbers. They talk about $20 million, yet they charge the athletic department $6 million every year that they write a check for and send to the university, and then the university sends back 20. Well, I'm a financial advisor and I rely on calculators and computers a lot, but I can do 20 minus 6. That's 14. So the real subsidy is 14 million, which puts us in the bottom of our conference. The peers that we're being compared to, not Alabama, not Auburn, not Georgia, not Florida, not Florida State. We're talking about Troy. We're talking about South Alabama. We're talking about our conference peers, Middle Tennessee, who was just in Bartow Saturday. We're talking about Southern Miss. We're talking about Old Dominion and Charlotte, schools that are coming into our league. As in compared to that, we're in the bottom. It certainly doesn't make it sound that way in the Carr report, though, does it? You would think that we're just blowing money unbelievably. And that's not the case. Now, let's take this a step further. When we're looking at the Carr report and we're analyzing expenses, another number that we've heard a lot is it's going to take $22 million just to get football up to the upper level of Conference USA. $22 million. Well, I think, I told you it seems like a year's gone by, but there were a couple of articles that came out where Coach Bill Clark himself said, all I need to compete at a championship level, and you guys can answer this for me, is an indoor practice facility and new coaches' offices. The cost of that, there was a blueprint already put together from 2 or 3 different firms. The cost of that is really going to be somewhere between $8 and $9.5 million to do it at a first-class, top-of-the-line level. Well, guys, $22 million and $8.5 million, there's a big difference between the two. Now, that's certainly a lot of money. I mean, again, for a program that hasn't invested in athletics, period, in 5 years whatsoever, $8.5 million is a lot of money, but I want to put it in perspective for you. The university system itself borrows money all the time. In fact, you can look it up right now. The University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa owes right at $1 billion in bond debt right now, today. UAB is far, far less than that. But as far as athletics goes, we owe zero. Do you know, assuming the football foundation wasn't there at all, that the city didn't want to help at all, which they do, UAB could go out and borrow that $8.5 million at 3.75%, amortize that over 30 years. So just to put that in perspective, that we're talking about we're talking about a few $100,000 a year, that just the increase in ticket sales alone by Bill Clark winning and the excitement that he's brought in would more than cover. And to think if we invested, we get better players, we're going to enjoy the product on the field a whole lot more, because frankly, we've been there the last 7 or 8 years and it was really tough before Coach Clark got there. So somebody told me this story. They said, UAB, I think Ray Watts was in a meeting. He said, they only averaged 11,000 fans 2 years ago. And I thought to myself, what a great statement. There was 11,000 of us, they couldn't run off, and we had one of the worst products in the country, right? We had no investment in it whatsoever, and we're still there supporting the team just like you guys are here today. And I think that is truly awesome, and I commend you guys so much, because when you look around this room, you guys are the reason that this is kept going. Do you know the administration themselves said this will die after a week? That's their exact words. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you it's not dead, and it's stronger than ever. And we're going to take you guys, Jack, all the support we're getting around the state. We're going to take some information Jack's going to share with you, and we're going to go to Montgomery, and we're going to win. And there's no doubt in my mind, I'll stand up here in front of you and in front of every camera out there and tell you we're going to play football again in Birmingham at UAB. And we're going to change this system, and we're going to get leadership that has a vision for where this university needs to go, the vision that we all invested in, the vision that we love, the vision that we want to see, and Birmingham's going to thrive because of it. Because frankly, Jack, we're just too far behind the times, man. And we're relying on you and all the work you're doing, because you look at cities like Boise, you look at cities like Charlotte, you look at cities around the country. Heck, I even go back to Orlando. Now, they got Disney World, which we don't have, although Muscle Shoals is going to build us something. I'm not sure what's happening with that. But if you look at Central Florida, they turned FBS the same year we did. Boise turned, I think it was the year after we did, in 1996. And I want you to look at what's happening with those communities. Has anybody in here been to Boise, Idaho by chance? How amazing is it compared to where it was?
Downtown's pretty cool.
It's unbelievable, the renaissance that has happened there. The enrollment has more than doubled since they invested in FBS football, and their president and their board of trustees will tell you the best investment they ever made as a university was investing in athletics. And look at the return. People all over the country, I will tell you this, when I heard Boise State turn Division I, and I was on the team at UAB, and I was reading a Sports Illustrated article about us, and it talked about South Florida, Central Florida, and Boise and us turning Division I remember this. I went, who is Boise? Who is Boise State? You don't say that today. You know, they've beat Oklahoma. They've made a name for themselves. And people around the country know who they are. Central Florida, the president that moved them Division I and invested in athletics, on their own homepage, they talk about him, and they're talking about all the accolades. But they say, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but I actually put it in the letter that we wrote to the Board of Trustees. They actually say about him, what he's known for is his investment in athletics. And that was the driving force behind the enrollment growth that took place at Central Florida. And now look at them. They're in the AA Conference, Merit Athletic Conference. It's unbelievable. They're the second largest undergraduate university in the United States of America. They have 62,000 undergraduate students. They were barely bigger than we were. They were just a little bit bigger than we were when they turned Division I in 1996. I remember that game very well because Dante Culpepper threw for 3 touchdowns right over the top of me. I was chasing people the whole game. So unfortunately, I remember Central Florida. Huh?
It was a sight to see.
Well, I saw him. I was chasing him the whole game. I remember it well. So those are not so good memories. But you know, you look at these other universities, and why is everybody trying to get there? And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, if we can't fix this problem, if we can't fix the leadership and we can't change the vision for Birmingham and for UAB, wait till you see what happens at Mobile in South Alabama as they're investing. Wait till you see what happens to them. We don't want that. Birmingham would be the largest city in the United States without an FBS team in the city. Right now we are, because technically we don't have a team, although in my mind I know it's coming back. But right now we don't have a team. We're the largest city in the United States without a college football team that plays at a Division I FBS level. We got to fix that. We've got to fix that, and there's some ways that we're going to fix that. Financially, there's some things we can do. Number one, they're doing a study. I wish Don Heyer was here, but Don is on that task force, and you guys, he has been a champion for everybody in this room. He has had to put up with more and butt heads and argue and fight more than anybody I've ever seen. And we've all had to go through things that no other school in the country is going through. And they're trying to hold us to a standard that no other program in the United States has to be held to. But guess what? We're going to crash right through that. It doesn't matter. So what have we got to do? There's a lot of things coming out of that study. And we don't want to be held to too different of a level compared to our peers. And Dr. Ray Watts has made a statement, and you guys have heard it many times, where he said, I want to benchmark UAB to the upper half of its competition in Conference USA. Well, if that goes for the amount of money we have to raise, if they want to use that benchmark, guess what? We're going to use those words because it's going to go on the other side. We want the same commitment from the university. Guys, they got $2.6 billion in revenue. This is not a money issue. It's not a money issue at all. So we're going to hold them to the same standard that they're going to hold us to, right? So we want to make sure that there's the proper commitment and there's the proper investment coming from the other side. I'll give you an example. We have no desire to make the students bear the burden of this problem, but I want to give you some comparisons. Student fees in Conference USA. There are student fees that go into every tuition hour, right? So the student fees that go along with that at other universities, how much of those do you think, just a ballpark idea, go to athletics at other universities, percentage-wise? It's interesting. Just to put it in perspective, Old Dominion, 50%. Charlotte, 50%. Middle Tennessee, I think it's upwards of 50%. Southern Miss, don't hold me to this one, but I'm going off memory because I didn't memorize all of them, but it's well over a third. Guess what it is at UAB? 5%. 5% of student fees go to athletics. You change that to 10%, that's another couple of $1 million a year coming into the athletic program. That changes the delta that Alan Bolton and Ray Watts like to talk about night and day. So I have no interest in raising fees on the students, but guess what? We can certainly look at how those are allocated, and if we want to benchmark that, because here's the byproduct of that people need to think about. I certainly have no desire to take away from education. I love the education I got from UAB. I love that my peers, I've had relatives that have gone to UAB that I encouraged, and I think the education is fantastic. I think we'd all agree with that. And I don't want to take away from that at all. But here's the ripple effect. Does anybody in here know of a corporation that's a $2.6 billion corporation that doesn't invest anything in advertising? What's the best advertisement you can get? Anybody watch J.J. Nelson run the 40 on the NFL Network? Did anybody see him on ESPN afterwards and Fox News and all over? And they scroll up, UAB football player. J.J. Nelson, fastest time in the 40. Sports Illustrated, USA Today. It's all over the place. All over the place. You think that's got any kind of reach as from an advertising standpoint? You think that has any kind of reach to put UAB on the map nationally where people are looking at, you know, I want to go out of town when I go to college. Hey, I heard about UAB. I saw they had the fastest man in the NFL. I'd like to explore that a little further. Because here's what's interesting. When we talk about the ripple effects, for every 1,000 students that enrolls at UAB, that's $5 million in the economy in the city of Birmingham. For every 1,000 students, that's $5 million. What people aren't talking about is, and I saw this somewhere and I've heard it from a couple of other places, it was on the Save UAB football. Do you know the administration is sending out surveys right now because so many people are pulling their applications? And they're going, why are you not going to come to school here? Asking a series of questions, and the last one is it because we cut football, bowling, and rifle? What do you think the answer is going to be? Unbelievable, right? Oh, I'd love to get hold of that response. If anybody could help, that'd be I think I know what it would be, and I think everybody in here knows it. But think about that. They're starting to see the ripple effect, because if that 1,000 students aren't at UAB, guess what? That's $5 million that's out of the economy, but that's $10 million of tuition money that's not at UAB. You know, that goes a long way to supporting, you know, the financial need that athletics has, right? And a proper investment. So the money thing is not the issue. We've got to think bigger. We've got to think more than just looking at last year. You know, UAB Forward talks a lot about we've got to move forward. We've got to get past this. All that kind of language. Well, why didn't we do that when we evaluated football, bowling, and rifle? You know, we need to look at the present and what would happen if we did invest in it, and what kind of impact would that have as we move forward, guys? And that's exactly what we need to look at. That's what I hope that the task force is going to come out of that. Thanks to a lot of Don's work, and Frank and Harold and people that are on that committee. They're working very, very hard. And especially after that, whatever that little memo was that came out last week, I'm sure that's having an impact on how they're moving forward. Jack, I'm trying to make sure I'm covering all the points, you know, that you wanted me to cover. Jack gave me some notes, so I'm doing my best, man. You know, I don't work real good off of notes too well. But, you know, we also need to look at UAB. I'm talking a lot about change in leadership, and I've never seen it more than I have since October. You know, we need a lot of changes at our university because it has changed a lot in the last 10 years. I'm being honest with you, I don't think that I knew how much. But this scarcity mentality versus an abundance thinking, you know, there's a big difference between the two. Scarcity says, ooh, I got to keep what's mine, and protect it and hold it. And the idea of abundance is, I want to give, I want to share, and I want to be the best I possibly can be. That's what UAB used to be. But frankly now, there's a change in mentality, and I believe it starts at the top, guys. And I know that UAB is now, UAB is a university. It is not an extension center. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you now. I understand that it was chartered from the University of Alabama, and there are some great University of Alabama alums and people. This is not about that, but I'm telling you now, UAB is a university. You drive through there, it's different than it was 20 years ago. It's different than it was 10 years ago. And the students feel different. It's not a commuter school. It's not an online college. We can use that technology, but it is a real place. And those kids over there like Tim Alexander and everybody else that's marching in the streets and working with him, they deserve to have a complete undergraduate experience. And that's exactly what we're fighting for. And there is not a downside to it anywhere. There's nothing you can find that tells me there's something wrong. If it's the argument of investing in a medical school, I got news for you. What's the NHI funding? NIH funding? So we were 31, I think, a year ago. I looked up, there's 30 schools in front of us. Do you know 22 of them play FBS football and have a complete university? 22 of the 30. So you're telling me UAB is not capable of that? UAB, the largest city in the state, is not capable of supporting a Division I football university when Troy has one, when Mobile has one. You know, Montgomery has a stadium now for Alabama State. You're saying UAB couldn't have that? We would have had 3 sellouts this year had we had the stadium that was proposed in 2011, which, by the way, was funded at a level that we were asked to get it funded at. Box is pre-leased for 5 years and $15 million raised, and it got tabled. You know, and I could go on and on about that. Those are things that Jack's going to talk about that we're going to try to fix. But I just wanted to end with one thing. Actually, 2 things. I was reading. I like to do a little bit of reading every morning. I've tried. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. And I was reading a speech from Winston Churchill that he gave at a church in World War II. And one of the things caught me because I thought it just reminded me of us. It says, never give in, never give in, never, ever, ever give in. Never give in anything great or small. Never give in except to the conviction of honor and of good sense. And guys, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about restoring honor. We're talking about what makes sense for UAB, what makes sense for Birmingham, and frankly, what makes sense for this state as we move forward. And in closing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have, but in closing, I just want to say, Don Hire put his arm around me at halftime of the basketball game. And this meant a lot to me, and I think it will to you guys. And he said, Justin, I just want you to know, I think Coach is looking down, and he's awfully proud of the UAB family. And you know, I thought about that for a minute, and I agree with that. I didn't know Coach as well as Don Hire, or as well as Charlie, or some of the people in this room, but he's the reason that I came to UAB. A basketball guy recruited a football player to UAB because he's the reason that I came. Because he talked about, Justin, you're going to be part of the beginning of this football program. You're going to be part of establishing a foundation that we're going to build on. And he told me, he said, in 20 years, you're going to be bringing your kids back to an on-campus stadium and you're going to be watching UAB play and you're going to be proud to know that you laid the first bricks here. And that's why I see a lot of former players, and I posted that on our former player wall today, how proud I am because a lot of these guys laid the bricks. And Coach Bartow's the father of it all. He had a vision. He was a visionary and thought bigger than just today. He thought long-term about what it would be, and I'm awfully proud to say that he was my athletic director and my friend, and I do think he would be proud of everybody here. So, Jack, I want you to come up because Jack's got some really exciting things to share with us, but I just want to say thank you again. I'm honored just to work beside you guys in restoring this vision and restoring this program, and you know, like Coach Clark said, let's keep giving them hell, right? Thanks, buddy.
Okay, guys. I'm going to start. I think I'm going to start with the good news. And I got some stuff I want to share with you guys tonight about where we are and what we're up against and why I think we can win. But over the last 4 months, Justin and I particularly have found ourselves thrust into a battle that I don't think either of us really thought we would be fighting at this level, and we found ourselves at times butting heads with the most influential, the strongest, most powerful board in the state of Alabama, and a board that's been unanswerable doesn't answer to anyone. And we found ourselves not just going against their power and their influence, but also going against their bank account. And anything we say and do, any statement you see from me, should have at the bottom, not paid for at taxpayer expense. Because I don't view the coffers of the state of Alabama as a mechanism for paying people to keep their mouths shut about wrongdoing. And I don't view the coffers of the state of Alabama as a mechanism for rewarding people beyond the market rate to do things that their conscience otherwise wouldn't allow them to do. And as a veteran, 10-year veteran of the state legislature, I've advocated for fiscal responsibility. And as any of you who follow politics, and you may like my politics, you may not like it, I'm glad we found something we agree on. But I have been a strong advocate for fiscal responsibility. We have looked at K-12 and made some significant reforms and changes. Like I said, some of you may love them and some of you may think we're crazy, but it's time to demand the same thing from the leaders in higher ed. And when we see things like massive buyouts, and we see things like paid consultants to do what staff is there to do, it causes questions to be raised. And the memo that came out this week, you know, I've been, this calendar year alone, I've done over 100, I've had over 100 media encounters through press conferences, interviews, and that doesn't include what I did in November and December. So I'm north of 150 interviews in the last 4 months. And every time I stood in front of a television camera or sat down with a reporter or I wrote something for release to the media, it came from inside of me. It wasn't somebody telling me what to say. I actually have a 4-year college degree. I can think for myself. And my challenge, since we now know that the remarks made by Karen Brooks, the chairman of the Board of Trustees, and by Dr. Witt and by Dr. Watt were written by someone else, I would challenge Dr. Watts, Dr. Witt, and Board Chairman Karen Brooks to stand up publicly and tell us what they think. Not what a PR guy tells them to say. Just tell us what you think. Be honest with us. Be forthright. This process has lacked that. And it's time that we began to address these issues, and we're going to address them in Montgomery. But where are we today? I mean, I think that's a question we all want to know. And television's here tonight for the first time. And it's the first time I think I've been on television about UAB stuff in 2 or 3 weeks. And I know outside of my childhood friends, everybody's glad. But I want to share with you, we had a poll done last week. Now, these results will not be released until in the morning. So everybody stand up. Raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. Right here in church. That I will not post these numbers on social media until it's been released tomorrow. Thank you. We've already talked. All right. Now, let me tell you about the survey. This was done in the Birmingham media market, which runs from Pickens County, west of Tuscaloosa, all the way up to Weiss Lake and Cherokee County, up on from the Mississippi state line to the Georgia state line, from Marion County probably down to Talladega County, from Cullman to Clanton, all of that. And we polled all of that minus Tuscaloosa County, because I want to use this to influence legislators, and I know where the guys in Tuscaloosa County are going to have to be. And I understand that. We all have to represent our districts. Thankfully, folks in my district haven't put me in as awkward a position as folks in Tuscaloosa have put them in. But, so this covers about a third of the state of Alabama. First question was on Dr. Ray Watts. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of UAB President Ray Watts? Favorable opinion, 13%. Unfavorable, 42%. So basically 3.5 to 1. Unfavorables to favorables, 3.5 to 1. The next question, I've kind of been the face on this. I'm the one that's been on television, so I threw my name out there because I get asked about this all the time, and I've got a big ego too, so I wanted to see. Very favorable, 6.3%. Now let me say, my district that I represent, that we're in tonight, makes up 2 to 3% of this poll. So this is third of the state. Very favorable, 6.3%. Somewhat favorable, 12.9%. Somewhat unfavorable, 3.4%. Very unfavorable, 4.1%. No opinion, 40%. Never heard of, 32%. But so 19 to 7.5. My favorables, his favorables were 3.5 negative to 1 positive. Mine are 2.5 positive to 1 negative. The U.S. System Board of Trustees, favorable, and I'm just going to give you the favorable, unfavorable. I'm going to add those up. Favorable, 33.7%. Unfavorable, 29%. So if I were running for office with those numbers, I would be making plans, post-election plans, for what I would be doing out of office. 33.5 to 29 is not good. UAB football, very favorable. Now this poll was taken with us being off the news for 2 weeks. Very favorable, 55.6%. Somewhat favorable, 16.6%, 73%. Unfavorable, 9%. Would you agree that the UAB president acted improperly when ending the UAB football program? Agree, 65%. Disagree, 18%. Would you agree or disagree that UAB's president ended the UAB football program due to influence or pressure from the UA System Board of Trustees? Agree, 53%. Disagree, 15%. That same 3.5 to 1 margin. Would you agree or disagree that UAB receives fair and equal treatment from the University of Alabama System Board of Trustees? Agree, 27%. Disagree, 51%. So almost 2 to 1. Think that UAB is not treated fairly. Would you agree or disagree that the appointment process to the UA System Board of Trustees is an open and transparent process? Agree, 22%. Disagree, 44%. Would you agree or disagree that 18 years is too long to serve on the UA System Board of Trustees? Agree, 70%. Disagree, 14%. Would you agree or disagree UAB should have its own separate Board of Trustees? Agree, 79%. Disagree, 8%. Would you agree or disagree UAB should be allowed to have its own football team? Agree, 87%. Disagree, 4%. 87% to 4%. Would you agree or disagree that the current controversy surrounding UAB is about more than football? Agree, 81%. Disagree, 5%. Would you agree or disagree UAB football would draw better in a facility other than Legion Field? Agree, 60%. Disagree, 18%. Do you oppose UAB reinstating their football program? Support, 83.5%. Oppose, 8%. Would your levels of support for your local legislator change if you knew they supported UAB? More likely to support a legislator who supported UAB, 57.5%. Less likely to support, 5%. Do you agree or disagree, last question, that the Board of Trustees should allow UAB to invest in athletic facilities such as practice facilities and locker rooms? Agree, 86.5%. Disagree, 5%. This poll was made up of, this is not a general public poll, this is likely voters. 5.8% of those polled were University of Alabama graduates. 4.8% were Auburn graduates. 10.6% were UAB grads. 34.1% were from other universities. And 44.7% did not have a college degree. 41.4% of those polled lived in Jefferson County. 13.1% lived in Shelby County. Another 17.6% lived in Walker, Blount, St. Clair, and Bibb County. And 27.9% lived outside of these 7 counties, minus Tuscaloosa County, that make up the Birmingham TV market. So, guys, this is what we've done with an active, in-your-face news campaign, and what we've done with an active social media campaign. And we can't match them dollar for dollar. They'll crush us. I think at some point this year we dropped about 20,000 on television. They dropped 100,000 of their money, of your money rather.
Do we know where their funds have come from specifically?
Well, we've been told it was. I saw something this week that said that it was not taxpayer money, but it was money donated to the universities. I don't think the money was donated to the universities for PR campaigns. It was donated to help educate kids at Alabama, Auburn, or Alabama, UAB, and UAH. So, no, and they've got all these foundations and stuff. But guys, I want to step back and take a look at historically how these things are won. And people oppress other people. It's human nature. And as much as I want football back, as much as I want greater autonomy for our university, if not outright autonomy, these 15 people that make up this board are not the 15 most evil people that ever walked the planet. I know some of them, and I think very highly of them. But they get in the room and they get focused on Tuscaloosa, because 14 of the 15 of them are Tuscaloosa folks. And throughout history, what it's taken are folks who, first of all, had a strong conviction that they were right. And it took a willingness on their part to step out and not be afraid to fail. And I'll tell you, I've gotten correspondence from folks who have said, please keep up what you're doing. And I've said, contact your legislator. And they said, well, I work at UAB and I'm afraid. And you know, that bothers me. A college education isn't designed to give you the answers to all the questions. A good college education trains you to question all the answers. And when you look at the way our band members have been told they can only perform at university sanctioned functions, and how folks feel like their jobs are at stake, it's time that the era of fear and intimidation at UAB needs to end. And people need to be released to do their job and do it well, to get their education and ask all the questions they want and move forward, because those are the people who change a society. Those are the people that make a difference in a culture. And you know, dating back to the earliest pages of Genesis, Moses stood in front of Pharaoh and said, let my people go. And 10 plagues later, Egypt was giving them their riches to get them out of there, for them to leave. And fast forward, and this is the one I keep thinking about, fast forward about 6 books to the book of Judges, and Gideon one day, and I'm not going to preach a sermon, and all my examples don't come from the Bible. This is actually probably about my last one. But Gideon is hiding, trying to beat barley and wheat to get enough to feed his family before the Midians come in and steal all the crops. And the Midians have been oppressing the children of Israel and coming in and taking all their crops. They'll let them plant them, and then they'll come in and take them. And an angel appears to Gideon, and he says, "Hail, O valiant warrior." And Gideon's like, whoa, who are you talking to? The only one in here is me, and I'm hiding because I'm scared. And he told him to assemble the children of Israel. And 10,000 people showed up. And Gideon was told, tell everybody who's afraid to leave. And thousands left. And then God tells Gideon, have them kneel down at the brook and drink water. And the ones that cupped water in their hand and looked around, he kept them. And the folks that lapped it up like a dog, he sent them home. So Gideon starts with 10,000. He's down to about 1,000. And it gets cut to 300 people. And they went on to an incredible victory, and they took the spoils of the Midians rather than having stuff taken from them. And when you just reach the point where you've got nothing left to give and nothing else, you're just at the point where you're not willing for anything else to be taken from you. And you're not afraid to lose, because losing's no worse than living like this. You can keep going, you can fight. I mean, Justin, if I'm coming at you, the most dangerous place for me to have you is in a corner. Because the only way out of that corner is through me. Now, we were told in a memo this week that we're at war. Well, guys, the only way out of this corner is through the folks who put us here. And we've got to be willing to go forward. Martin Luther nailed his thesis on the door of his 95 points on the door at Wittenberg. And Catholic, Protestant, no religion, I don't know. But Martin Luther said, you know, people ask me sometimes, why are you doing this? I mean, I get it from the legislators all the time. Why are you, do you understand the position you're putting yourself in? And I wake up in the morning and this is what I got to do, because it's the right thing to do. And Martin Luther said, here I stand. I could do no other. And we've got to have it instilled in our hearts as we go to Montgomery that losing's not an option, but if we lose, we're no worse off. Do we have football right now? No. So what are they going to do to us? Take football away? I mean, they removed the leverage they had on us all these years is gone. I'm currently reading the autobiography of William Wilberforce, who was a member of Parliament in England in the 1770s, a man of great wealth and privilege, who single-handedly in Parliament led a 20-year fight, and I don't think we're in for a 20-year fight, but he for 20 years stood up and fought the slave trade in England. And he made it his life's work. He was elected to Parliament at age 21. At 27, he began making his life work ending slave trade. And it took him 20 years, and then 25 years later, 4 days before his death, slavery ended in England. Now, that was not a popular move in the 1770s, 1780s, but it was the right move. And William Wilberforce, by his strength of character and his willingness to stand, changed a nation. All we're trying to do is change a university system. I mean, folks have been called to do bigger things. Chris talked about the colonists, George Washington, Patrick Henry. I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Folks, nobody's going to kill us. Abraham Lincoln presided over a nation torn in half and stood on principle and reunited that nation. Justin mentioned Winston Churchill, who rallied England in the face of World War II. I mean, Listen, they were fighting the Nazis. We're just fighting a bunch of rich guys that think they can tell everybody what to do. I mean, this is a winnable battle because if we're not afraid to lose, let me tell you, what they operate off of is fear and intimidation. And you're going to lose your place. I mean, they're already telling legislators, you can't get reelected if you take this position. Well, they're not looking at the same poll numbers I'm looking at. I don't think you can oppose us and not feel that you could be in some danger in the next election cycle. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German pastor, stood up to the Nazis and gave his life in World War II. And Bonhoeffer said to remain silent in the face of evil is evil itself. And we're facing folks who are doing things that are wrong. We have to stand. And I'll tell you, if you stand, as we step out, it makes it easier for folks to step up because someone else has already gone out there and hadn't gotten their head shot off. And I've developed a theory that we're all looking around, folks are looking around at people we perceive to be leaders, and they're really influencers. The leaders are here in this room. And the influencers are the folks that when they're just more adept at perceiving when public opinion is shifting than other people. And when we start having the influencers jumping on the bandwagon, we're going to know this thing's tilting our way. And we're starting to see that. Alexander Solzhenitsyn stood up to the Soviets and spent a great deal, one of the greatest writers in European history, in this century. And he stood up and faced down the Soviets. Now, he didn't tear down the wall. He wasn't standing on the tanks with Boris Yeltsin, but the influence and the will of Alexander, the spirit of Alexander Solzhenitsyn led to the fall of the Soviet Empire. Dr. King, in our own state, brought massive social change by standing up. And he did, go back, look at history, look at the Montgomery bus boycotts. It was an underfunded group with a ragtag group, if you will. Someone told me yesterday, or a couple of days ago, we think you're our last hope. And I thought, oh my God, that's scary. But a ragtag group, the Montgomery Country Club didn't end segregation on the Montgomery bus system. The Birmingham Country Club didn't lead to change in the city of Birmingham. The civil rights movement happened because folks who had been on the wrong end, on the bad end of treatment, stood up and said, no more. It's time for UAB folks and UAH folks to stand up and say, no more. Ronald Reagan stood in front of the Berlin Wall and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. We talked about that in our last meeting. Lech Walesa, an electrician from Warsaw, organized the electrical union and brought down communism in Poland with a strong ally in Pope John Paul I. Nelson Mandela, standing up in South Africa, 27 years in prison, he comes out and winds up president of the country. Now, we generally do things the opposite way in America, but He comes out of prison and he leads a country. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things, we're going to win, and one of the things that's important for us to remember, when Nelson Mandela was at the apex of his power and influence, he used that to heal a nation, not to bring revenge and wreak havoc on the folks who had imprisoned him and done such horrid things to his people. And we're going to come out on top, and we can't use that to beat up on other people. You know, you saw the courageous young man at Tiananmen Square, which I had the opportunity to visit actually the day before Dr. Watts killed the football program. And this young guy stood in front of a tank, and the driver of the tank didn't know what to do. And as we stand up, there are people in positions of influence that if we'll just stand up, they want to do the right thing, but they're afraid to. And if we stand up to a few of those bullies, we're going to win. And we're going to have a mechanism when you guys go to Montgomery by the middle of this month, certainly by the end of the month, but I'm hoping 2 weeks into the session, you'll be able to tell any legislator in the state of Alabama how many folks in his district are supportive of what we're trying to do here at UAB. And you know, one of my favorite stories, and one of everybody's, anybody that went to Sunday school, one of their favorite stories is David picking up 5 stones and facing down Goliath. And guys, this is a David versus Goliath. But I read it again just recently. David won. And we need to be prepared to win. And we're not going to win because we got the largest group of folks. We're not going to win because we've got the slickest advertising budget and the best message money can buy. But we're going to win because we're right, and we're going to win because we're united, and we have a message that's simple to understand, and we have the masses on our side. And we can't be intimidated. We can't be afraid of what might happen if we fail. We have to be prepared for how do we handle it when we succeed. And I think without question, we have the ability to win. And as I've spoken to folks in Montgomery, I would estimate that probably, and I haven't even spoken to everybody, but probably 60% or more of the legislature is sympathetic to our situation. And I think as we continue our program and we continue communicating with folks, we're going to move these people from being sympathetic to being on our side. And, you know, it's been, I'm astounded that we've generated all the publicity and all the public support. This poll that I showed, I mean, it's a legitimate, real poll. If we had been in the 45 to 55 with 25 to 35% undecided, I'd have been really happy. But we have done, this state, this media market, and it goes beyond this because a lot of the stuff that gets aired here gets aired in Montgomery and other parts of the state. This state is tuned in to the plight of UAB. I was talking to a guy, I spoke to a civic club in Hoover a few weeks ago, and a guy told me the first weekend in December, he was in New York City, and he made a purchase at a bookstore in New York City, and he swiped his card, and they wanted his phone number. So he wrote down his phone number. The girl says, area code 205. Where's that? He said, Birmingham, Alabama. And she says, oh, Birmingham. She says, man, I can't believe what they did to y'all's football team down there. And the numbers tell the story. People know that it's wrong. We just have to execute, and execute well in Montgomery. And I have confidence that we'll do that. We need a huge crowd. Whatever a huge crowd is, we need it in Montgomery on March 10th. I appreciate the fact that a lot of you guys are going to be down there March 3rd. There have been some questions asked about me, of me about the legislation. I will have it. It's not been pre-filed, and the reason it's not been pre-filed is because every member of the legislature is going to have an opportunity to sign on as a co-sponsor. Because I want you to know who's willing to stick their neck out for us. And I want their constituents to know who's willing to stick their neck out for us. And you know, there are things we do in Montgomery to try and keep from putting people in awkward situations, and this is not one of them. You're going to be with UAB or you're not. And we're standing up for what we believe is right. You're investing your time, your efforts. A lot of you some of you drove from out of town to be here, and we're going to respect that, and we're going to work hard to bring home a win. And what that win exactly will look like, I don't know. How we'll get there, my God, I'm just stunned at where we are today, but I'm not stunned at the fact that we're winning. It just probably doesn't look the way I thought it would. But thank you for your time. I'll answer questions afterwards because I know there's more on the program and y'all want to keep it moving. But guys, we can make a difference. And we got to keep doing what we're doing. Thank you.